Hello friends, welcome back to the Rayo Moon Oracle. I'm Rayo and today we're back with another Oracle deck review. This one is for the Archetypes deck by Kim Krans. And this is part of that little mini Kim Krans series I'm doing. So we've already covered the Wild Unknown, we've covered Alchemy, now we're doing Archetypes, and then after that we have the Animal Spirit deck. But that'll be a little bit further into the future because I'm using it for a different set of readings right now. So with the Archetypes deck, it came in this nice square box at the time. It's similar to how the Alchemy deck came in if you watched that video, so similar type of box. The Wild Unknown and the Animal Spirit deck both came in more like rectangular boxes, and I didn't end up keeping them. And I've kind of decided now to do that also with the Archetypes deck, just for a little bit more travelability for this deck. So it came in a square box and the cards came in this container here, which is nice and round, which is a very interesting set of cards in this regard. It was very interesting to get them for the first time and I'm like, okay, hey, this is going to be a little bit different to handle. So came with our book here, our guidebook, which is actually a pretty thick one. There's a lot of cards in this deck. I do not know off the top of my head how many there are. Let me see if it'll say at the beginning here somewhere. Contents. Looks like 78 cards, so pretty much the same as a normal tarot, which is interesting. With the Archetypes deck here, so if we open up our container here, we got this cool box, has like a pearl on the inside. This is what the back of our cards look like, so very cool kind of gem coloring on the top. And it matches with the book here, which is cool. I thought it was interesting because that is similar for how the Alchemy deck looks a little bit. It's like the symbolism is kind of mirrored throughout the whole product, which makes sense. So pulling out, these are our cards. So nice round cards. They are pretty big, I will say that, in terms of shuffleability, the ability to handle them. They're a little bit more difficult. So I can get my whole hand around them, but my hand is stretched out for sure, right? So that makes them a little bit more difficult to work with and it took a little bit to get used to them in my experience as I was working with this deck more and trying to get used to it. So my cards have definitely loosened up since then. They shuffle a little bit better. They don't stick to each other as much. So our cardstock is pretty thick, which is nice for this, especially with the rounded aspect of them. They're not slick, so they don't like slip out of my hands or anything. There's definitely some cards, different cardstocks that you've gotten for different tarot decks or oracle decks that are like really slippery. These aren't that, which is good, considering they're a little bit more difficult to handle. As I drop a card here. Hello, come back. What card fell? The Orphan fell. Okay. So my cards have definitely loosened up over time, which is really good in terms of workability, and it's gotten easier to shuffle them. So with this deck, unlike with Alchemy, this deck definitely shuffles a little bit better. The shape of the Alchemy cards, with them being a hexagon, they get a little bit more willy-nilly and difficult to handle as they're rotating through and the corners of that hexagon shape, versus these are all round, so then it's constantly the same shape and it's kind of easy. Your hand is not changing too much in order to hold on to the cards. But they are big cards, so if you have really tiny hands, they might be a little bit more difficult for you to handle, so just something to keep in mind here. So with our guidebook here, the Wild Unknown Archetypes guidebook, Kim Krans has in the beginning the different like descriptions and the thought processes behind the deck, which I thought was interesting. And then we get into the way archetypes work and the imaging behind it, and then our descriptions. There's a lot of really good information in the beginning of this guidebook that I definitely recommend going into and reading. I need to get back into it and read it again because there's just a lot going on. So pretty typical Kim Krans style here, right? So we've got our description on this side, we've got the image of the card. So I got our like regular description down here at the bottom. We can maybe sometimes have more keywords. They're also underneath the title of the card right here. More to ponder if the card is in detriment or in the positive is in this one. Yeah, when in light, when dark. And then on the side we have other like little aspects to go into for how this card might present itself, or another way to kind of dive deeper into the card, which is very typical Kim Krans style and I very much appreciate as well. So pretty much the same all the way through. This is a thicker guidebook than the Alchemy deck for comparison's sake. So a little bit thicker there, not by a ton, but there's definitely more cards in this deck. Let's see, what else? The imagery in the Archetypes deck here was definitely one I had to get a little bit more comfortable with as time went on. The in-between, like, let's see if I can find an example. This deck is more harsh, is kind of a way to phrase it or a way to say it. It's not in a bad way necessarily, but it is in a kind of jarring way from other Kim Krans imagery. Some of the imagery here is a little off-putting, which again, not a bad thing, but it's not something you had to get used to with a new deck and something new, like the step away from like what you thought Kim Krans style was. If you get like kind of get all 4 decks at once, then you probably won't notice the difference as much. But as I was getting the decks as they were progressing and new ones were coming out, it was a much stark difference from the Animal Spirit deck that had come out or the Wild Unknown, where that card was just there specifically, like the more like unsettling images were present in the cards that would make sense, right? So when it was showing up in this deck with images that you don't have a connection to in the same way, there's definitely just unsettling imagery here. That took a little bit of getting used to. So something to kind of keep in mind. One of my friends really does not like this deck, and I can understand why, but I've grown to really enjoy it lately, especially with Alchemy and working with those two together. The combination of those two is very potent and gives a lot of really, really good readings. So I've enjoyed using this deck. I'll use it when I'm trying to get an overall theme for a reading. If I'm doing like my own yearly personal reading, like my birthday reading, to get my theme for like the year, or I'm asking like, hey, what is the lesson I'm learning behind this? What is the theme of the lesson? And it pulls into something very specific, and it is really good in terms of that for readings. The way this deck feels in comparison, right? So it's like the Kim Krans talks about this themselves a little bit, and so feel free to dig into that with a little bit more research. But the way the energy of this deck is much more strict and much more cut and dry. It makes sense with like what archetypes are, right? This is it's a set thing. It's like, okay, the father energy. Father energy is paternal, it obviously, but it is more strict. It is more action oriented. That's like that masculine energy, right? If you think about what a father is, what that masculine energy is, and then you have the positive and negative, the light and the shadow of that archetype, that aspect. So let me read, like, for example, the guidebook here with that one, because I think it's father's like number 2 or number 1 or 2. Come on. Starborn, the mother, father. So when the father energy is in light, it is supportive, strategic, regal, kind authority. When it is dark, it is disappearing, disappointing, devastated by failures. And then keywords we have are the great father, the masculine, the protector. So alongside the mother, the father resides in the central axis of the archetypical family. The father embodies both light and dark aspects of the masculine. Thus, he is infinitely dynamic and complex. His energy is strong and regal, embodying such virtues as honesty, wisdom, and loyalty. Yet, ironically and simultaneously, the father is often absent, literally or emotionally. Through absence or action, the father eventually reveals that he is neither a king nor a god, but a human being with many flaws and wounds. He is both the guardian and the one who leads us to the wolves. Here yet gone, the champion and the failure, the father can never resolve or escape this duality. It is inherent in the archetype itself. Witnessing the father's limitations allows the child to grow beyond the family and into the world. So, strong energy there, right? And this is all the cards here. So I didn't know how Kim like really got into some of these, and it's really fascinating as you kind of dive further in, right? So that's why this deck I think is really good in order to see the overall lessons of a reading, right? Archetypes exist in every aspect of our lives. We embody certain archetypes at certain points in our lives, or just an archetype as a whole. You might be that more like that mom, that mothering friend, right? You're the mom of the group, or we're that like silly class clown, right? Those are ways archetypes exist in our everyday life, and the way this deck can be used, right? So let us do a reading here. So archetypes, for those who are watching, One card, please. For those who are watching, what do you want to say? What do we need to keep in mind for those that are watching this video? Thank you. Huh, okay. 2 came out to the forest, but the top card is the Destroyer. Fascinating. Okay, nice and close on that one. We can see the eyes there. We got some color, kind of gold coloring and blue in the middle. This is card number 23. So let us read. 23. The Destroyer. The savage, the unexpected, the rejected. The Destroyer, the final of the 3 archetypes in the trio of existence, has necessary yet painful work to do in the world. Culturally, we have an aversion to endings, and we hang on to the permanence as a signifier of success. Yet the Destroyer pulls the rug out from underneath relationships, jobs, homes, and all forms of security. It is the part of us that wants things to end. Its painful orientation is to uncover our true purpose. The Destroyer does not let us linger long in comforts, as it knows not much happiness in that realm, or not much happens in that realm. With its piercing eyes, it seeks out stagnancy from a distance, and the rest becomes history. In the old myths, this is the moment when heads begin to roll, the grounds open up, and the castles crumble. Hold on for the ride, the Destroyer has arrived. When it is light, it is swift and precise blows that redirect our life. When it is dark, it is self-destruction, negativity, unwillingness to rebuild. In old tales, the Destroyer sometimes appears as a black dog. Other times it takes the form of gods and goddesses such as Shiva, Kali, and Opis. Consider Picasso's statement, every act of creation is first and all an act of destruction. Okay. Interesting energy, right? So Destroyer energy, we're letting go of something. We need to let something be destroyed. We need to let something end. So that way we can start that rebuilding process. We've been holding on to something for too long now, and it is time to finally let it be destroyed and end, because either way, the universe will do it for us if we don't do it ourselves. So strong energy there. I had a thought for the archetypes that I'm blanking on now that I wanted to say. The way there's different kinds in here too. They break it down. Kim Krans breaks it down a little bit more. So we have in the archetypes, we have the selves, the places, the tools, and the initiations. So the selves are ones like the mother, the father, the warrior, the judge. Places are the forest, the desert, the ocean. If you think about these things, right, and you have that very stereotypical image that comes to mind when we say these like individual words. If I say the ocean, you have a very specific image that comes to mind. That's an archetype. What the ocean encompasses, what it has in it, what it represents to you, what it represents in a whole through stories, through mythos. So we also have the tools, which is like something like the flame, the tear, the ring, the kiss. And then the initiations, which are more of the higher spirit cards. So those are Eros, Agape, for example, Anima Mundi. I got that card recently in my yearly reading. So those are really, really big archetypical energies. I'd consider them almost more similar to like the like Major Arcana and the Tarot for this deck specifically. So I do recommend archetypes, but it is not for beginners, I would say. It is not one that you can kind of just jump into and get good readings out of. It took practice for me, and it took time as I grew as a reader, and now I'm only just finally feeling like I'm getting to the point where I can work with this deck in a productive way in the readings I provide to others on this channel and to myself. It took a lot of time. So I think if you come to archetypes before you're maybe ready for it, it will kind of chew you up and spit you back out for your own benefit, but in a rough way at the same time. It's much more of a strict and harsher energy for sure than the Alchemy deck is. So I think if you are feeling called to it, if you've seen it in readings and you've seen it, like if you're seeing it in this video and you want it, then feel free to get it. But it's not the easiest deck to work with, and it takes some time. But here's a couple cards we'll just kind of show. So the Queen, we've got the Desert. This is the Unseen, the Hunter. Here's the Mundi that I was talking about. The Womb. the Bardo, the Mentor, the Eternal Child, and we'll end with this one, the Maiden. So just some imagery for you to kind of look and connect to if you decide you maybe want this deck. But yeah, don't recommend it for beginners. As you develop as a reader, as you develop in the tarot space and the oracle space, it might call to you at that point. If you want to complete your Kim Krans collection, then obviously you can get it then, but it's going to be a deck I think you'll use in very specific situations, and that you'll grow into as time goes on. So that's all I have for us today, friends. Hopefully this video resonated with you, made sense, gave you a little bit of perspective into the Archetypes deck by Kim Krans. I hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe down below and check out my other content. That'd help me out a lot. But have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye.